What it do, Dream Team? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with AUKUS. Is Australia at risk of becoming the US's 51st state? Possibly. I've seen I've seen a couple videos kind of talk about this topic, and I've seen comments where some Australians were kind of upset about, like, you know what I'm saying, being too close with the US, being too friendly with the US. They like, man, we need to kind of separate ourselves from the U.S. Although they love Americans, it's America. I feel like Australia's like, we need to kind of separate ourselves a bit. But we're going to dive in this video and find out what they are talking about. However, before we do, if you have a favorite video, or if you happen to enjoy this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's dive in.
Is Australia at risk of becoming the US's 51st state?
So AUKUS is really about, in American terms, the military control of Australia.
AUKUS is a trilateral security partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States. In September 2021, leaders of these three countries came together to announce their partnership on security interests and defence capabilities. But the deal's primary focus is controversial. The pact focuses on supporting Australia in acquiring a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, SSN, in the Asia-Pacific region by the end of 2040. A date some experts deem too optimistic for such an immense project.
Really?
In March 2023, the alliance announced an optimal pathway. Firstly, Australian military and civilian personnel would embed with American and British naval forces for training. Then, by 2027, the United Kingdom and the United States would establish a rotational presence of submarines in the region. Following this, the US would sell 3 Virginia-class submarines to Australia, with potential to sell 2 more to cover the country's naval needs until its own are constructed. The plan claims to provide Australia with the sovereign capability to own and operate SSNs at the earliest possible date.
See, so far, I'm not really hearing anything bad so far. I feel like it's a great thing for all 3 countries involved, right? All 3 are like, they got each other's back. Hey, I got you, you got me, we got each other. Australia gets to throw in with the UK and the US on military training exercises and gets to learn from their militaries at the same time, kind of share some naval fleets until Australia can get their own, and they already bought 3 from the US with 2 more in the future, I'm sure, depending on how the deal goes down. So far, I'm not seeing an issue. I'm not seeing a problem. Let's find out.
Yet many experts and politicians are skeptical of the proposal, claiming that such a deal would increase Australia's dependence on the US. Clinton Fernandez, a former Australian Army intelligence officer, warned that the AUKUS pact would make it impossible for Australia to have an independent defence policy, as the relationship already is a transactional and unequal one, in which Australia abides by the US grand strategy. And Fernandez is not the only one. Former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull argued that relying on the sale of US submarines until the ones under AUKUS are built would completely jeopardise Australia's submarine capability for at least a decade. With the US lacking in spare submarine supply, it is more likely that American submarines would be stationed indefinitely at Australian bases.
Okay, when they start putting it like that, I start understanding the issue. So this AUKUS pact, it seems like Australia is becoming more dependent upon the U.S. And I believe the guy in the beginning said this is just America's way of controlling Australia, like through military. And yes, I feel like if Australia becomes dependent on the U.S. submarines and they don't get their own submarines through the AUKUS pact, then like they said, the U.S. submarines have to stay there indefinitely. And I mean, if the U.S. submarines there, I'm sure the U.S. gonna be there, and they just gonna be like, y'all don't need y'all's own defense policy. Y'all are gonna adopt our policy. Y'all are gonna do things the way we do it. Really, we're gonna tell you guys what to do, when to do it. You guys don't have to worry about it. We got this. Just listen to us. And so I'm starting to understand what could go wrong with this deal.
Australia will then have built ports and paid for American submarines that they have no control over.
That's
In a
crazy.
recent statement, another former Prime Minister, Paul Keating, criticised the pact, saying that the country had become a target by joining the military alliance with the UK and US. In particular, there are concerns that AUKUS is unnecessarily dragging Australia into the US-China rivalry by supporting the presence of US submarines in the Asia-Pacific region. Strategist Hugh White has similarly warned that supporting this partnership is not a smart way to go, given China's growing economic and military power. Moreover, AUKUS has been criticised as being a drag on Australia's economy, with uncertain returns. Canberra has already contributed $2 billion to expanding the United States submarine industrial base, despite any guarantee that the submarines will even be delivered.
So these ports are about to be built in terms of waiting for the AUKUS submarines. But she's saying there's no guarantee of these submarines being delivered. And so these ports would be built for these submarines that America would have in Australia, but Australia would have no control over. And so they're saying Australia is making itself a target by teaming up with America and the UK, and they're a target in the U.S.-China war. But is it not a good thing, right, to team up and to have the U.S. backing you, the military strength and power of the U.S. backing you? Right? I can understand the cons. Don't get me wrong. The cons are there. I'm seeing it in the video. I'm hearing it. But there's some pros to it. I feel that I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. If you completely disagree with me, please let me know in the comment section. But I feel like there's some pros to this pact.
The minimum cost of the total project has been billed at $180 billion, but would only create 20,000 jobs, a relatively small return. Some experts are also concerned that AUKUS uses technical loopholes that create a double standard with respect to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. A non-nuclear country like Australia developing nuclear-powered ships, while allowed under the treaty, could set a precedent for countries to use the excuse of naval reactor programs to increase their nuclear capabilities. And in addition to the immense financial costs and accelerating a nuclear arms race, critics have pointed out that AUKUS only diverts attention from the climate crisis. Australia has suffered from increasingly devastating bushfires and floods in recent years, with the climate crisis presenting a guaranteed high-risk threat. Many feel that funding military expansion leaves decarbonisation by the wayside and will undermine the international cooperation needed to cut emissions by heightening regional tensions. But supporters argue that AUKUS is necessary to navigate increasingly complex geopolitics in the region and deter future aggression from China. Given the high stakes, will the AUKUS deal be worth its cost for Australia?
Don't get me wrong. There are cons to this deal. There are things that may not be fair to Australia in this deal. But I think, like the AUKUS, I think there's pros that you also have to look at. Now, do the pros outweigh the cons? Do the cons outweigh the pros? At the end of the day, is going to be the question that you have to ask yourself. But I think having that pact with the UK and the US is big in terms of if China, and I know it's China and the US, and they say Australia could have made itself a target by teaming up with the US. But at the same time, I think having the backing of the US tells China, like, probably ain't the smartest idea to come to Australia. Probably, they got the U.S. beside them. And I don't think China, even though their military power and strength is growing, they still ain't at that level just yet. I feel like to challenge the U.S. so it could deter China's aggression. But that's what I think. Now the cost, $180 billion for the entire project, is absolutely gigantic. Jesus, I don't know what kind of strain that puts on the economy of Australia. But geopolitics wise, I think it's a smart move. Military strength wise, I think it's a smart move. Economy wise, maybe not. In terms of taking the focus on what are they called? Natural disasters such as. Is a bushfire a natural disaster? Well, disasters such as bushfire, such as floods, such as other things, it does take the attention off that, which is a big problem over in Australia and does need attention. So I do agree with it from that perspective. I want to hear what you guys have to say. To me, if I was to make a final decision, I don't have all the details necessary, but I think the pros do outweigh if you ask me, I would say the pros outweigh the con, if only by a tiny bit. I would think, yeah. But like I said, I don't have all the details necessary to make that call. Y'all let me know how y'all feel in the comment section. That's all we got for this one. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to subscribe. Get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. And then check out this next video. Like click it, and I'll see you guys there.